Hello, podcast listeners. This is your host with the most, JJ. We're going to talk about charitable giving. We're going to talk about the worst, best flight I've ever had in my entire life and break down some childhood fables. Sit back and enjoy this episode of JJ Meets World. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirls as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called J.J. Meets World.
I feel like Starbucks is unfairly brought up a lot when it comes to fundraising. Now, hear me out on this, okay? I have been to 4 different virtual fundraisers in the last couple of weeks, and they've all mentioned, like, you know, it's $3 a day. That's just the cost of a Starbucks coffee. You know, you could go without that and you could make this donation. Why does Starbucks always have to be the thing that we have to give up in order to fundraise? Is it because a cup of coffee is so universal that is, you know, where it's at? But we don't even go cup of coffee anymore. I heard Starbucks brought up specifically in all of these times. So my question is Starbucks coffee such a luxury that we now consider it as something that you could give up? Because I will tell you this, routine drives lives. Routine, I think, is really important for a lot of people. And if your routine is going through the drive-thru at Starbucks every morning, and that's how you start every day, find something else to give up. You know,
my first reaction to what you're talking about here is that the language is just wrong. What are we talking about giving up for? Like if someone were to say to me, Tucker, would you please donate to the Puppies and Kitties Club of North Dakota? And all you have to do is give up a cup of coffee. To me, that's not like, well, I'm not going to give up coffee. I'll keep buying coffee. But if you're saying it's the same price as a cup of coffee, well, no problem. I can do that. I give up the price of I pay the price of a cup of coffee all the time for stuff, for apps on my phone or computer stuff or whatever. So the notion of you're giving something up, I think, is maybe the wrong way to message it. It's like, no, it's donating to this is as painless as buying a cup of coffee, which is why you should consider doing it. Because if we all do it, look what happens when we all buy coffee. Starbucks becomes a $1 billion company owned by Kenny G.
Kenny G owns Starbucks?
He owns, or at least, okay, this may be old information, so I don't know where he is now.
Okay.
But I remember when you and I were working at the Fargo Theater, Kenny G came there one time. Mm-hmm. And by the way, Kenny G is a short man. I'm saying like 5 foot exactly. And someone there, might have been Sabrina, had said to me, yeah, did you know he owns a part of Starbucks? And I went, what? Apparently, Kenny G was one of the ground floor investors on Starbucks. And so regardless of all the money he's made doing circular breathing with a saxophone, the vast majority of his wealth is from Starbucks, which I guess also explains why you can often find Kenny G albums in Starbucks.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Oh, well, my life has changed just a little bit today.
So really by donating to these companies, donating to these causes, what you're doing is you're taking money out of Kenny G's pocket, JJ. So if you really want to stick it to Kenny G, you should donate to the Puppies and Kitties Club of North Dakota.
Or just encourage people to like only play horn instruments.
Or listen, next time you're feeling some Kenny G, put on some Yanni instead.
Oh, now those are fighting words right there. Right? It is interesting. You know, we're coming off of where Tucker and I record JJ Meets World is out of Fargo, North Dakota. And we just had Giving Hearts Day, which is a huge community giving day. And they raised over $20 million. And for 14 years straight, they've raised more money every single year. And it's money raised and then by nonprofits through a single entity. So rather than having to go to everyone's website individually, you can go to one website, you can have one transaction, but give to 20, 100, one organization. And I'm amazed at the giving that takes place. But I do think that there is probably another side of the coin on this at one point, which is trying to figure out how to ask people to give when they think that they've given enough. And it's tough. There's a specific reason why I don't work in the world of nonprofits, is because I would be terrified to think that the next day giving may dry up. And I want to say this too. In a time during a pandemic when so many people have lost their jobs and things have changed, to do $20 million on one day is amazing. And it means that people prioritized it in their budget. And I live in life where I don't live off of a budget. I should, because I should be saving more because I want to retire as early as possible. But I do think that giving is really important in your local community. I also think that in the last, we'll call it,
you're a sleepy boy this
I'm
morning.
A sleepy boy. Excuse me. Let me take
every time you yawn, I'm tempted to like insert a word here, but I can't think of something in time.
Yeah, right. I'm just thinking you're thinking that the internet's going out on my side. Okay, here we go.
And now I'm yawning. Thanks, buddy.
Yep, we're yawning.
We are. I wish we were Kenny G'ing.
So what I think is, so people are budgeting to give during a time like this, which I think is really, really important. But I also think we're at a time when there's more noise in the soundtrack of nonprofits than there ever has been before. When I was a kid, there were not 500 nonprofits in our local area. There was probably something more like 50.
Right.
And starting a nonprofit to fill a need, back in the day, you probably had a humane society in your town. You did not have multiple animal rescues going on at the same time. Look at the number of theater companies that have come around in the last 30 years. And so your support, I guess, is it getting watered down? Whereas you used to give $100 to a dance company, and now you want to support two dance companies, so they're each getting $50. You're still giving the same amount, but they're not getting as much. I don't know. And every nonprofit I talked to said we surpassed our goal, so maybe there's nothing there.
I don't know. It's the kind of thing from my perspective. So obviously, I'm a member of Theater B, which is a nonprofit. And we have participated in Giving Hearts Day since the first year it came around. Thank you. Rest in peace. Matthew Burkholder was actually the member of our company that got us to do it. So every year we participate in it. And for sure, it is our most successful fundraiser throughout the year. This year, we raised just about $32,000 in total, which is huge for Theater B. And that's going to be huge for most nonprofits. And so when I think there are very few things in life where you can look at it and not find the potential for a downside, the potential for one. But when it comes to Theater B, I do sit and go, before Giving Hearts Day, were we ever successfully able to raise that much money at one time? And we never were. And that's not, I think what that speaks to is mostly what it really does take to mount, for the most part, a successful fundraising campaign. And that needs a mechanism up front to really get the message out there. I think the biggest positive thing that Giving Hearts Day does is it goes, listen, most of you nonprofits don't have that ability to mount that kind of marketing campaign at the outset to raise the awareness. So here's an opportunity to do that if you would like to participate. And for a company like Theater B, which doesn't have the budget to do a big marketing spend and do some other stuff, Giving Hearts Day really has helped us. If I was in a company going, I think no matter what, if you're an organization that does fundraising, you just have to do sort of a macro analysis of your company. Does participating in Giving Hearts Day help you or hurt you? And like you're saying, it might be a situation where you're an organization that is of a size that has the ability to do really effective fundraising throughout the year, where Giving Hearts Day would be a really bad choice for you. But for Theater B, Giving Hearts Day has really, really helped. And so I think it really is more like you have to look at Giving Hearts Day as a tool if it works for you, and whether or not the net benefit is positive or negative, I really can't judge that for the community as a whole. But for Theater B, it has been nothing but a net positive.
Well, see, there you go. That's fantastic. And I know that one of the great things about Giving Hearts Day for a nonprofit is the fact that it creates such a buzz that
Right.
it gets people active in their giving.
I think
And
though,
that's
JJ,
important.
I don't want to sound like, I don't want to come off as though your anxieties are invalid, because they're completely valid. In fact, I think you're coming from the same place that all of us in the arts are coming from, that anxiety of, we're doing something that doesn't scale massively in a way that would be economically beneficial, the same way making toilet brushes is, right? Or even making movies is. And so we're in a scenario where you're almost always, especially in a market the size of the Fargo-Moorhead area, you're always worried about, even if you were doing sold out shows throughout a year, you still might not make your nut at the end of the year, just because it's super expensive to do live theater or all sorts of these other forms of art. So that anxiety of, where are we going to find money from, is always present, even when we're getting money, right? Because then the anxiety is, well, yeah, we're getting money, but could we be getting more? Are we doing something else? So that worry is so hard to escape, and it makes so much sense, especially because you might be in a situation where you're not sure if Giving Hearts Day is hurting you individually or helping. And I wish I had better data on that. I do think that, I hope nonprofit organizations that do theater, like Theater B or other groups, can start to take advantage of the technologies of streaming and other things that definitely do not replace the ability or the experience of sitting in a live theater and watching it, but may create a mechanism for wider audience participation that could raise the funding floor for these companies. So I really hope we can come out with a positive from it,
Yeah, I mean, purely from like a business standpoint, right? Because we like to think of nonprofits not as businesses, but they are. It's a business,
Absolutely.
right?
Oh, yeah. It's cash flow. It's an organization of people that needs cash flow to stay alive.
So, I would look at it and say, like, okay, listen, if the puppy and kitty shelter by the end of the year is $10,000 behind whatever it generates, whether it's through Giving Hearts Day donations or adoption fees, let's say, my first thought would be like, okay, well, we need to change something that we're doing. We either need to bring in less rescue pets, or we need to we need to stop providing vet services, or we need to charge more for our adoptions to make sure that at the end of the year we are not in the red. We don't have to be far in the black, but operating at a red, because this should be a year as a great example to a lot of organizations, which is what happens when a catastrophe strikes. In this, everyone's in the same boat. And so there were a lot of programs and grants and funds that came through to help people get over that hump. But what happens if it's something individual for yourself? Like, your nonprofit that collects sneakers to provide to folks who are experiencing homelessness, your warehouse burns down. And it turns out the guy that you're renting the warehouse from didn't have great insurance. So now it's all on your insurance, which is now going to go up. And you also don't have sneakers anymore to give out. How are you going to survive that particular setback? Or you find out somebody's been embezzling from your company. How do you survive that setback? And
I don't know how we're going to survive once you find out I've been embezzling the tens of dollars that we make on online every month. Like,
Oh,
I don't know.
I
I don't know.
knew,
I don't know what's
knew
going
it.
to happen. Like, I've got a lawyer already, but he costs more than all the money I've embezzled so far. So,
Which, by the way, if you go back to one of our previous episodes just a few ago with brown paper tickets, it turns out I have to hire an attorney, and I figured out the pricing. By the time it's all said and done, I will end up owing the attorney more than the amount of money I can recover from that company. So
you know
they're
what?
going to get away with it.
I just realized I'm 35 years old and I can use the word embezzlement, but I couldn't necessarily describe to you what it is. Like, I know it's stealing from the company you work for, but like what specifically that entails, I couldn't tell you. Is that like laundering money, or I don't know. What is
Well,
embezzlement?
okay, so so do you know what laundering money is?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So embezzlement is different. Embezzlement is taking money or goods from the company and hiding it in the financials. So,
Okay.
for example, if you wanted to embezzle from a company and you, let's say, were able to be someone who reports. So let's say you sell widgets, okay?
Okay, I sell widgets.
And you are a widget salesman out in the field.
Okay.
Your embezzlement could be something like selling 1,000 widgets, but actually selling 15,000 and keeping the price from the widgets you didn't report.
Okay,
into that.
got it.
So the company still ships it out and you fudge the numbers, and the hope is that they see it as sort of like an error and it's no big deal, and they go from that. Accountants do it all the time, like with interest you make from funds.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, embezzlement is you work in a company, either it's your company or you work for it, and you're stealing from that company and you're covering your tracks by hiding it in the financials. That's embezzlement.
Yep. It's a crime of opportunity.
Got it. Okay.
Which is
versus
really,
like someone just like breaking in and stealing it who doesn't work there.
Yeah. I think this, anytime that somebody embezzles from a company, you are, you're a bad criminal, but also how did your company let it go? Like when you find out somebody's has been embezzling for like 15 years to the tune of like $1 million.
Right.
How is your company's reporting so poor? And, I think it happens more often than not in places where there are, like take like a church, for example. Right. So if you have a treasurer in this church, and they've been the treasurer for the last 10 years, and they, for the foreseeable future, will continue being the treasurer, but they need to pay for an addition on their home and they just need a little bit more money. They can see it as like, I'm going to write a check to myself with the intention of paying it back later.
Right.
But then they don't. And then they're like, well, it worked this one time. I even if you have the best intentions of paying that money back, it's a slippery slope that you can get down with it.
I just can't imagine the stress, because I get stressed out even as a kid. Like one time my mom gave me $5 or $10 to use on food at Skateland, and instead I used it all on a video game. And I lied to my mom that I used the $10 on food instead of a video game. And I felt so terrible about that like a week later I had to confess to her because it was so bad. I cannot imagine the daily stress of going, I hope I'm never found out for all that money I've been stealing from the company I work for. I would rather be poor. I would rather not have that addition on my house than get the addition and just live with the stress of knowing what I had done.
There are a lot of criminals who will tell you that the day that they got caught was one of the best days of their lives, because you're living with this secret, this giant albatross that's flying above you at all times. At a place where you and I worked, I caught somebody. Here'd be a great example of how someone could cheat the system. Okay. And someone got caught for this. So when I worked at a video store, people had late fees. Late fees amounts, could be anywhere from like $1 a day to $2 a day for DVDs and videos that they didn't return on time. That income is, amazing. Like if you run a video store, because it's pure profit, right? So you've already have this product. The worst case scenario is somebody else wouldn't be able to rent that product in that time, but you're still getting the money for it. You're guaranteed to get the money for it. It's a safer bet to have someone pay late fees than it is to have the product sitting on the shelf, because there's a 50-50 chance it will not be rented that day. And that percentage goes lower and lower and lower as the length of that movie has sat on the shelf. So one of the things that you could do would be to essentially negotiate late fees with the person who comes in. So let's say we're going to say Randy. Okay. Randy comes in.
Let's call her Randy O.
Randy O. Yeah. Randy O. She comes in and she's got $20 in late fees on her account because she rented Bring It On and Bend It Like Beckham and didn't return them for 5 extra days.
Yeah.
Okay. So you tell Randy, who, by the way, has probably already come to the front desk. No one comes in to pay their late fees. They come in to rent something else and then find out that they have late fees.
Yeah.
So she comes in and she brings 2 DVDs up to the front. She is going to be renting Terminator 2 Judgment Day and Flowers for Algernon. And
She's got great taste.
What was that?
She's got great taste.
She really does. Well, she's got a report due tomorrow.
On Terminator.
On Terminator 2 Judgment Day. So you tell Randy when she gets up there, oh, sorry, unfortunately, you've got $20 in late fees here. And she's like, oh. Now, here are the scenarios. Scenario number 1, she decides not to rent anything and she walks out the door. Mm-hmm. Legally, I can't stop her. It's not like it's not like she has a warrant out for her arrest. She just has late fees, and she can choose not to pay those late fees. Scenario number 2, she has to put one of the DVDs back to be able to afford the late fees because she only has, $25 on her.
This is like a math problem from 3rd grade. Keep going.
It is, yeah. Scenario number 3, she pays the whole thing. Now, this is the optimal scenario. She pays the $20 in late fees and the $10 in the new rental that she's doing with those 2. And then you hope that, or as a business owner, you hope she leaves and then doesn't return Terminator 2 Judgment Day for an extra 5 days because you just wanted to watch it one more time. Mm-hmm. And then you get more late fees on top of that.
Yeah.
Now, here's when you're a clerk working behind the desk, here are the things you look at. Number 1. When are her previous late fees from? Let's say that it is April Fool's Day, Tucker's birthday. And that's when Randy O comes in to rent. Well, these late fees are from before Christmas of the previous year, which means Randy is not a frequent renter. Mm-hmm. So it wouldn't hurt you necessarily if you really put her feet to the fire and said, listen, I need you to pay all these late fees.
Right.
Now, let's say that the late fees are from 2 weeks ago and someone has bothered to take the time to write a note on here that says she's a really good customer. She rents all the time.
Embezzling is super complicated. My God. Okay,
it is super complicated. So then you decide, listen, I actually have the ability to waive part of these late fees. So I could say, listen, if you could pay $10 today, we'll take care of the other $10. And it's not like you're deleting money. It's not like you're taking $10 out of the till. You are actually putting money that previously didn't exist. So at the bottom line for this company at the end of the year, it's not like they say, oh, and we also have this great wealth in late fees that are unpaid right now.
Right.
There's debt to our company. So this is where things get tricky. Because there was an employee at the video store who worked there for, like 7 or 8 years. And during this time would delete people's late fees, but still charge them. So if they were paying in cash, Randy O comes up and let's say scenario number 3 happens where she's going to pay the whole late fee and get her rentals. You would just zero out the late fee and then take that cash and pocket it.
Got it.
Now, what's great is 99 out of 100 employees of this video store wouldn't do that because it is stealing. You are stealing from the company. You are embezzling money by using a crime of opportunity stance. So they wouldn't do that. They'd be honest because let's face it, employees who think that they are owed more than they actually are the worst employees.
Yeah.
At one point, like, you agreed to this job, right? You agreed to come in and work for 7 hours on this shift, and you know that your perks are free rentals, and you don't get unlimited popcorn, whatever it is. You know, you agreed to this job, but then that little thing in the guts that says, like, I should be getting more for this. I'm a great employee.
Right.
Well, you're not a great employee. You know,
yeah, those are people who have not learned how to play poker yet.
Right. Very true. Very true. So then it's the moral quandary. I think there's the people out there who can find ways to justify stealing to make it worth their while. And I don't have that frame of mind. I mean, I've been a victim of theft before.
Mhm.
Someone broke into our house or into our garage and stole my dad's car while we were sleeping.
Whoa.
Yeah. When I was in
That's
fifth,
insane.
when I was in 5th grade, we have a window that leads into our garage, and the dude chopped it out with an axe.
What?
Yeah, crawled in, hot wired my dad's car, and then drove it out of our garage. The garage door was closed, so that he had to flip this little thing and move the garage door up. And then they found it a week later in Watertown, or in Watford City, North Dakota, all the way across the state. And that even became one of the more messed up Gordon family adventures, because my dad had an employee at Dakota Natural Foods who was a skydiver who said, listen, my friend's got a plane and he's heading that way anyway. If you guys want to get on his plane, all you have to do is pay for the fuel and he'll fly you out there. Or the other option would be my mom and dad would drive all the way across the state, and then they'd drive 2 cars back.
Right.
So this way they can drive the whole thing. And so my mom was like, well, that's great. And we'll take the kids too. The plane was a skydiver plane. It wasn't a nice, like, fancy dancy Hollywood plane.
Right.
So they don't even have seats in it. What they've got is a bike rack and then garden, like lawn chairs that they clip into the bike rack.
Not going to lie, that sounds both terrifying and awesome.
And it was also like, it's the first time I've ever been in a single prop plane, so there's
God, and you're in 5th grade. That's right. Never mind. As a kid, I would have been losing my mind. I would have been crying so bad.
There's duct tape on the wing when we got up to it. I mean, this thing, at one point you're like, are we going to survive? And so it barely goes faster than a car, especially with the interstate.
Yeah,
so,
and you feel everything too. You feel every gust of wind, every bird fart. You feel it.
And we don't have headsets, so if I'm trying to talk to my mom that I'd like another orange slice, I have to yell at the top of my lungs for her to be able to hear. There's no insulation, so it's very, it's cold, even though that we're going, like in mid-May. And the thing that really got me is, so I have a problem with heights. I've never been a great person on a roller coaster. I can think of 3 I've actually gone on my entire life. But the pilot goes, you guys want to see something cool? And he put his hand, an open hand out with a pen on it, and then he took a nosedive, and the pen floated up in the air and then fell back into his hand when he leveled out. I don't have a seat belt. I'm sitting in a lawn chair, and we're talking the lawn chair where it's like the braided vinyl on top of each other. So like, it's not even great. And then the best of the best at the end, end of this whole thing, the guy goes, okay, now this shouldn't alarm anyone, but we're lost. And he goes, we had some cloud cover and I lost my bearings. And so let me just take a quick look at this map and we're going to find out what's going on. So the way he found out where he was, he goes, I see a town over here. So he flew towards this town, and then he circled the town once so that he could see the name of the town on a water tower. So, let's say we were by Ashley, North Dakota. He sees Ashley on the water tower, and then he pulls out a road map and he's like, okay, so this is how I get back to following the interstate.
That actually happens far more often than you think.
People getting lost in planes.
people just looking out the window to figure out where they are
Really?
is actually really common. And the only reason I know that is because when I was training for my drone pilot's license, you actually have to learn a lot of the same just book knowledge and map reading that normal pilots have to learn. And so, which I have not retained almost any of it, but there's all sorts of physical markings just on the Earth that pilots look at all the time if they need to. It's like
Really?
it's almost like it's how they would have first navigated, and so it's one that you can always go back to if other things aren't working out.
Someone once showed me that they look like white sombreros that are on the ground that essentially send pings
Okay.
to planes, that they're like beacons almost. And so a plane can be like, oh, okay, here's a beacon that I can follow if I need to get from point A to point B. And I don't know if it has to do with like if planes get lost and they use it as an aspect of that, but it is a pretty weird when you think about, like, because you think like I'm on a plane, I'm safe, they know what they're doing, they've got all those instruments, that's why I'm not allowed to use my phone. And then it turns out, like, at any point they could be like, hello, ladies and gentlemen, if anyone has MapQuest on their phone, could you please come to the pilot the cockpit? That'd be great, thank you very much, nothing to worry about. Have you ever been on a plane that's had to make a landing in a place other than your destination?
I'm trying to think. I think I have
like an emergency landing.
Not an merge. I'm trying to think now. I'm sure I have, just because I've flown so many times, but it wasn't like nothing has ever. No, you know what? I don't think I've ever had to deal with an emergency landing. But I have dealt with the plane thinking they might have to reroute or do something else, and telling us that for weather or fuel or something like that, but never anything. Let's put it this way. If I was ever in an airplane where something catastrophic was going on, they never told me.
Oh, and you kind of hope they wouldn't, right?
Oh, right. Well, what am I going to do with that information locked back in CB? Like there's nothing you can do.
I am in an exit row. Everyone remain calm.
I know. I mean, this entire last year of me working on myself has been dealing with anxiety, which anxiety in air travel is super common, because that's an environment where you as the passenger have zero control. So all you can do is think about it, which is what anxiety is what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to prepare mentally for a potential future bad thing. And so I always wanted to be in a window seat, because I always felt psychologically like if I can at least look out the plane and get some idea of what's going on, I'm in like a better situation than if I knew nothing at all, which is totally bogus. In fact, it's probably the opposite is true. If I'm looking outside as an untrained observer and I'm seeing the wing do something or something else, I'm going to come up with all sorts of reasons why I think that's a bad thing and start to cycle on it. And I'm still just a passenger sitting in the back of the plane. There's nothing I can do about it. Yeah. Oh man, air travel and anxiety sucks so hard.
I love air travel for the exact reason you're talking about, which is I don't have to be in any control of it. So within my friend group recently, I've made a change, because tell me if you agree with this statement, Tucker. I can sometimes fall to the de facto plan maker.
Oh, without a doubt.
Right.
In fact, most of us probably would go, I need to get a ride somewhere. I should call JJ.
Yep. And listen, and I love that. I love being there for my friends. But at one point, I finally started to be like, you know what? I got to let other people reach out to me. I got to let them do their part of this puzzle. And so I made an active choice to say, like, listen, if you want to get together and make plans, that's great. I will gladly be there. You tell me when to show up and I will be there with bells on, but I'm not going to be the one to coordinate the whole thing, because I am taking a break from that.
Yep.
And it's so far so good. It's been great for my mental health. And there are people who I have not seen in quite a while or talked to, because they're so used to that other way of communicating with me where I'm the instigator on it. So I love being on a plane because I don't have to do anything. I even get to, like, the worst case scenario is I have to decide, am I going to have a Mr. Pibb or a Dr. Pepper?
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't know.
I'm with you in that when I've got my anxiety in control, I can focus on the benefits of air travel. And I do like that part of not having to control things. But it's taken some learning to get there. In fact, that's something that I'm learning like in every aspect of my life right now. Like sometimes it's good to be the one in control and sometimes it sucks. And you shouldn't always be trying to be the one in control.
Here's a great airport flight story from when I just kind of let life take the reins. So I was flying down to Florida to go to a destination wedding with, at that time, my girlfriend, Jill. And I had thrown my back out like 3 days before. Now, my back, I throw it out about once a year, and it's muscle based, and it's probably because I'm dehydrated, but it's also because I ruined that muscle when I was in 8th grade doing a science experiment where the entire class had a tarp, and they were supposed to shake the tarp to simulate what it was like during an earthquake. And at one point, they all pulled the tarp up together, and I got flung to the ceiling and came down on my back directly. And then I cried in front of my entire class. Real great moment. But since then, I've had back issues. It's people talk about you just need one bad situation and it'll follow you the rest of your life. So that was mine. So throw my back out, and I'm able to get a pain pill from the doctor. So I get like 3 pain pills. Now, you have to understand, I am an extreme lightweight when it comes to anything that chemically changes my body. If I take NyQuil, I am out for 12 hours. No ifs, ands, or buts. I am gone to the world. I'm a lightweight when it comes to alcohol, like 2 beers. And you're going to be like, geez, what did JJ knock down a 12-pack? And be like, no, he had 2 Miller Lights. So you need to understand that. So Jill and I are about to get on our flight in Minneapolis. So we go from Fargo to Minneapolis, Minneapolis to Florida. But I take this pain pill. We get on, and I take this pain pill after we're sitting at the gate, about to board. When we're boarding, there's a problem with our seat assignment, and it turns out Jill and I are actually assigned in different rows. So we're both in the middle of a row, one right in front of the other.
Oh, no.
Jill gets in, and she sits in the row right in front of me. And there's 2 women who are both attending the same conference but don't know each other. So they're talking over Jill the whole time. And Jill says, would you guys like to sit next to each other? And they're like, oh, no, that's fine. Because who wants to sit in the middle? I get on the plane and I fall asleep immediately.
Poor Jill.
The next thing I know, we're at baggage claim in Florida, and Jill looks like she's been through the worst day of her life. And I kind of look at her and I'm like, what's the matter? And then I also look at the clock and I'm like, okay, we were supposed to be here by 7. It is now like 1:15 in the morning.
Oh my God. And you have zonked out even through the connection?
Yeah. So so here's what happens. So we get on that plane and we're seated. Turns out there's a mechanical problem with the plane.
Okay.
So they deboard the plane, which is huge. If they deboard a full plane, like that is a massive thing for an airline to do.
And that is a very bad feeling as a passenger.
Right.
Because you're like, oh, today is officially over.
So what they tell us is like, good news, everybody. We've got another plane coming from Philadelphia, but it's going to be all the way across the Minneapolis airport at another terminal. You're going to actually have to collect your baggage outside of the plane and then take it with you. And then they'll reload it from the tarmac over there. So,
okay, at least it's that. At least it's not you have to go through baggage again.
Right.
Okay.
So Jill wakes me up, and apparently I'm just like, what? And I'm drooling. And so she gets it to the point of where I can walk, but now she has to grab her luggage and my luggage and essentially push me across like 4 terminals to get to this other one. We finally get to that other one. Well, this plane is a different size, so every seat has to be redone and everything has to be reconfigured. We still don't end up sitting together. And so then we get on this next plane. Well, the problem with this next plane is that they are having a trouble with the cooling system. So unfortunately, the temperature in the plane is going to be roughly like 85 degrees the entire flight. So Jill is now there sweating, like her body is rebelling against what's going on. I am, again, full asleep right behind her this whole time. We get, or then they say, like, unfortunately, we won't be able to get you all the way to Florida on one leg. We're going to have to stop in Atlanta. You're going to have to switch planes in Atlanta and then continue your flight down to Florida. So Jill got me through another switch. Now, Jill is also kind of a nervous traveler. You know, she relies a lot on me when we go places to like know where to go and to read the board and everything like that. So now she's having to do all of that, which is anxiety ridden for her.
Yeah.
And I just am completely and totally conked out. And then I arrive in Florida and I'm, you know, and my first question is like, God, are we going to eat or what?
So basically, from the level of your experience, you were in Fargo, you got on a transport beam, and then found yourself in Florida, hungry.
Yep. And nothing in between.
And Jill basically went through the Oregon Trail.
Yep. Yep. Indeed she did. And she didn't even get to do the fun stuff. She didn't even go hunting. The whole time it was just her trying to, you know, cock the wagon so that we can float it across.
If only she had chosen Banker.
So while this isn't the worst travel story I've ever had by leaps and bounds, it probably is Jill's worst travel story.
Yeah. You know, that makes me think of when you took me to Vegas for my 21st and we were flying was it Allegiant?
Allegiant Air.
And you fell asleep on the flight about 15 minutes in. And I didn't because I can't fall asleep anywhere except a bed. I really, really can't. I mean, I've done it when you get so tired that you can't help it, but that almost never happens to me. So sleeping on an airplane is not going to happen. Sleeping in a car is not going to happen. And I was 21, so I had no even understanding of my anxieties at the time. And I remember hitting really bad turbulence halfway through that flight and looking at you like 3 rows ahead of me, completely zonked out and just hating you, just being like, yep. Oh, JJ, I hate you so much right now. I love you, but I hate you too. You should be going through the same thing I'm going through right now.
And you know, here's what's amazing to me. I like I said, I don't like roller coasters. Those scare the bejesus out of me, but I do love, well, I don't love, but I can easily handle turbulence on a plane. What's your favorite mode of transportation? Like, is it plane, car, train?
Driving, except I have taken a train before, but not like a long distance sleeper car type train. I've always wanted to try that. I've been in trains that would take you for like an hour, you know, and I've ridden in subways and stuff. But I would much prefer, I would love to do like a cross country trip with that I'm not on any particular time schedule on, except whatever the train is doing. And just like, I would love to just sit in this really comfortable train car and look outside as the countryside passes me by and, you know, get some food and maybe read a book or hang out and have some good conversation. I would love to do that because it in my mind, at least, it has all the benefits of air travel in that you don't really have to think of much, right? Once you're on it, it just goes and you finally get there. It's going to be slower than air travel, but it does not bring with it the anxieties of air travel in that, is this going to fall to earth and crash? Right.
Yep.
Yeah. You're really just, no, I'm on the ground. I feel like I'm in control. It could still crash. There could be still something bad happens, but that also happens in cars and I'm not scared in cars.
To me, it's all about convenience, right? So it's what level of convenience do you want? Mm-hmm. Driving somewhere is usually a little faster than taking a train. But you are an active participant in getting there the whole time. So riding on a train is much more, you get to socialize and you can go to the bar car and
You
can have
can
a
get up
meal.
and walk around and stretch your legs and stuff.
Yep. And then in a car, but then again, in a car, you can stop whenever you want.
Sure.
You can actually choose the destination points where you can't do that on a train. And then, of course, a plane gets you there in the fastest meaning or mode possible, but is usually the most expensive.
I think another way I would look at it too is it depends on what the travel is for. So if it's travel for an unpleasant thing, let's say it's some business meeting I don't want to have to attend, but I got to attend. I want to get there and back as fast as possible. I'm just like, just put me on a plane, get me there. Let's get this done. Let me get back home because I don't want to do this. But if it's say, I'm going to go and spend a week in Arkansas with my sister's family and then go to Kentucky for some time, I want a car for a couple of reasons. One, I'm totally fine taking my time to get there because the journey is going to be part of it. And I like being in my car because, like you said, there is a great part of being in control where it's like, yep, if I decide to stop, I'm going to stop. If I decide to go, I'm going to go. I can drive the speed limit, or I can drive slower. It's like, all that stuff. And in a trip where it's a pleasure-seeking trip, more often than not, I'm just going to want to go for the mode of travel that gives me the least anxiety and can probably help me enjoy the destination the most. Because if you have your car with you, then you have the ability to go do whatever you want in that town as well, right?
Yeah, and it is really great. And I mean, you can rent a car when you get places, but there's something about having your own vehicle there and making your own choices.
It's like having your own bedroom or your own house with you. Like there's a part of home with you. You're used to it. It's comfortable.
Now, what do you think about traveling with an RV? Would you ever do that?
It depends. I would not. It depends on this. How big are we talking?
We're talking it's like a nice Winnebago.
Actually, here's what I would say. I would definitely travel in one if I'm not driving.
Oh, interesting.
If it's a really large one, let's say it's a really big one, I'm only having that if I'm super wealthy. And if I'm super wealthy, then I'm hiring a driver, because the stress of driving something that large would just ruin it for me. I would hate it. I would be really miserable. I would much prefer someone who, some people are really made for long road trips, right? Like they can get in that bucket seat and drive for an entire day and it does not bother them. In fact, they prefer it. So I could do something like that. If it was like a smaller camper, like say the size of like a really large SUV or a large truck or something, I'd be totally fine with driving that. That wouldn't be a problem. But I think there's also a balance between the convenience it's bringing you and the stress it's creating.
Right.
The very first vehicle I ever owned and drove was a 1975 Ford Econoline conversion van. Not the size of a camper, but actually fairly close to some, and really big. And I had to learn how to operate that thing first before I could operate smaller vehicles. So I could see myself eventually maybe having an Airstream that I pull behind like a truck or something, or maybe a small Winnebago. That's the size of an SUV, but not a big camper, not one that I'm driving.
I will not. I love hotels. Even if they're super shady, I am always going to prefer, I think, like a hotel over like a camper, just because I've been in campers before and it's close quarters, and sometimes you just need to be able to be like, I'm going to go to the ice machine and just have a minute. A hot second.
Right, but I mean, I wouldn't want to take a family on a camper. But if I had a sexy girlfriend and we were going to go on a trip,
why did you have to just be sexy? Why did you have to like a girlfriend? Period.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm just adding that in because it's my fantasy here,
oh,
JJ.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry. Let me put it this way: a really unsexy but great personality girlfriend.
Why did she have to be unsexy? Why can't you just be a girlfriend?
I'm trying to please you, JJ. I'm trying to find the version of this hypothetical girlfriend
you
would
have
like
a female companion who's going with you on a trip,
who has no problem with looking at or touching my naked body.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Okay. And then I think a Winnebago camper makes a lot of sense. That's someone I'm not looking for distance from. But if it's like a family, like if I'm one of the kids or I'm even one of the parents, I think hotel room all the way.
Yeah, because kids like to swim.
Yeah.
Let me end this podcast with something that'll blow your mind.
Please do.
Are you familiar with the nursery rhyme and child's foot rhyme, The Five Little Piggies?
Yes.
Okay.
Child's foot rhyme.
Yeah, because you do it you start with the big toe and you work your way down.
Yeah.
Could
No, I've never heard that genre described that way.
Could you recite it? Do you think you know it well enough?
These little piggies went to. I can't. No, I really can't. I know like the concept and the gist of it, but I probably don't get the words right.
It starts with this little piggy went to market, and that's the big toe, and then you move down the line. This little piggy stayed home.
Mm-hmm.
This little piggy had roast beef. This little piggy had none. And this little piggy, you're down to the pinky toe, went wee all the way home. Do you know what this is about?
Well, all I know is that two of these little piggies are at home at the end of the story.
Yeah. Okay. So, but like, let's go through one by one. Okay. So this little piggy goes to market. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. This is the big toe?
This is the big toe.
Okay.
What do you think that means?
What's a big fat pig that's going to get slaughtered.
Yeah. I was 37 years old when I found out he's not going to shop. He's going to be slaughtered. I guess like there's people who have now officially changed it to this little piggy goes to the market, which then, when you use the English language means that he's going to a market. See, okay. I always thought that hold on. Weekly shopping for the other pigs.
But in your story, the third piggy eats a cooked meal of roast beef.
Yep.
So hold on. But where is that piggy? We don't know if that piggy's at home. We don't know if that piggy went to market.
Yep.
All we know is what that piggy's eating. Is that piggy also at home? In that case, it sounds like there are 3 piggies staying at home at least.
I'm assuming that the piggy eating roast beef is at home because he's being fattened up so that he can be like the big piggy, the big toe, to have to go to market.
So piggy number 1 is a commodity. Piggy number 2 is probably a pet.
No, he's not big enough to sell. So like the farmer wasn't going to get his like price. So he's like, I'll bring this pig home and fatten him up. I have one pig back home eating roast beef already.
Oh, got it. Okay, because I was like, what's the difference? Why aren't both these little piggies eating roast beef? And why roast beef? Do you think piggies really need you to cook that cow? I mean, I think, as far as I can tell, you put apple cores and banana peels in a trough, and little piggies are going to eat that too.
See, just like how I assumed that the first piggy went shopping, you're assuming that they made roast beef for this piggy. I think this piggy is eating like week-old roast beef that the farmer and his wife didn't finish.
Oh, it's table scraps.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not like they went slaughtered a cow, roasted its beef, and then gave it to the pig.
Right. The humans ate their fair share of the beef beforehand, and then once it started to mold, he was like, give it to the pig. I am intending to take him to market next week.
So really, all the other piggies will eventually go to market.
Mm-hmm.
So really, the moral of the story is death awaits us all.
Yep.
It really just depends on how big of a little piggy you are.
Yeah, exactly. You want to be the pinky piggy, which went wee all the way home, meaning that at one point he was maybe they were gonna like sell him as like a little roast suckling potato or pig,
or he has a bladder problem.
Oh, good call. Because he's going wee.
He was vacating his bowels all the way home.
Mm-hmm. Because he was so relieved at not being sold at market. Honest to God, this is one of those situations where I can't believe I was this old and never knew that was the premise of the story. And of course it was. Because if you read any of the old Aesop's fables or the Brothers Grimm, those things were messed up. And over the centuries, they've cleaned it up for kids so that it's less terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Rabbit and the Hare is an adaptation of the story of like it's a fox and a hedgehog, and this fox is going to race this hedgehog from one end of the field to the other, and the hedgehog has an identical cousin who's over at the other end, and so he goes like the fox leaves him in the dust, and then all of a sudden he gets to the other end, and there's the cousin hedgehog, but the fox is too stupid to understand that it's not the same one they started racing. So they keep racing back and forth. And eventually the fox's feet, his shoes fill up with blood.
Ah. The fox is wearing shoes. Was this agreed upon part of the race?
They're anthropomorphic. So like the hedgehog is wearing a vest.
But is he at
has
least
shoes.
wearing like white gloves with the black lines on the back?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Okay.
So, but those are some messed up stories, and we've cleaned them up just so that they'd be a little bit better. But
JJ, a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down.
it really does. And you know what medicine they're talking about?
Cocaine.
I was thinking the polio vaccine, but
Oh,
what are you going to do?
are these 5 little piggies related to the 3 little piggies?
I assume that all the piggies are related in the Piggyverse.
I mean, is it a continuation? Because is it a sequel, or are these? Is it like Rogue One, where it's in the same universe, but it's not a direct sequel or prequel?
This is another reason why I assumed that these pigs were going like this first piggy was going shopping, because I assumed all pigs must live in a house. That's what we've learned. The 3 little piggies had 3 separate houses.
Right, but only one of those 3 piggies actually went to Home Depot. The other 2 just looked around the farm. They were like, well, there's some hay here. I'm just going to build with this. And one was like, I'm going to build with sticks. And one was like, listen, I understand how construction works, and that's all really silly.
Yeah, but I mean, in all honesty, which one's more eco-friendly and renewable? Probably the house made out of hay, right?
I mean, whatever house allows you to be eaten by a wolf is the one that's probably the most eco-friendly.
Also, don't you find it interesting that the wolf is willing to blow down these houses rather than just like ram in there and be like, piggies?
Yeah, these hypothetical anthropomorphic animals don't use the best techniques to accomplish their goals, for sure.
And why is the wolf always the villain?
Well, he's eating the other animals. I mean,
yeah, but who do you identify with in this story? You're not a homeowner.
Oh, yeah,
You're
but I'm
wolf.
I'm also not trying to eat people inside their homes.
Yeah, not yet, but you enjoy pork.
Are we bringing Porky Pig into this now, JJ?
Yeah, I'm saying you enjoy pork. You are not a homeowner, nor are you building your own dwelling. You have more in common with the wolf than you do with the pigs.
I am also covered in fur.
Yep, you really are. See, why are we villainizing the wolf? We all should identify with the wolf.
I love dressing as sheep.
I can see that. I can see you dressing up as a sheep.
I also love dressing up like grandmothers right after I've murdered them.
Oh, yeah. The Little Red Riding Hood story. We didn't even talk about the fact that he full on Buffalo Bills that grandmother.
Yeah.
And then
he tucks it back and everything.
Well, yeah. And like the fact that he ate her so fast that he's able to the huntsman can cut open his tummy and pull out the undigested grandmother.
Yeah, like he just swallowed her. He didn't even chew her.
Yeah.
No mastication. And he must have terrible stomach acid because that's where most of the digestion happens anyways.
Yeah. Well, who knows? Maybe, there's miles of intestine that the granny has to go through before she gets to the stomach. So maybe she's just like in the first, quarter mile.
This is making me think of
pork chops?
Our recent episode we did with Kevin Kennedy, Book Club Part 2. And I think it was him, unless you brought it up. One of you brought up The Stinky Cheese Man.
I think
which
he
was
did.
a book. I think he did, which was a book I was absolutely obsessed with as a kid. And I hadn't even thought of it as an adult until he brought it up. And now I think about it about once a day.
Really?
And so I'm going to have to track down a copy of that. But he's fighting against a wolf, right?
Yeah, well, and it's the Stinky Cheese Man and other stories, and so it's it's great. In fact, it's kind of ahead of its time because it has like the court case for the wolf and the three little pigs.
He's sort of like going through all these fables and fairy tales.
Yeah, and finding instead of the Stinky Cheese Man is the gingerbread man in reverse. So, we brought up some good topics here, some real things that people can think about. Also, people say Katherine Heigl is really hard to work with. Have a great day, everybody. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. If I met Molly Ringwald in person, the first question I'd ask is like, so you were just going to have sushi sitting out in the open air all day before you had it for lunch?